sociology. Now we're going to start going in this part. We're going to do some of the terms. We'll go through the terms of what causes prejudice, not yet what to do with the prejudice after it happens, or how to solve prejudice, sort of. But we're going to talk about what causes prejudice psychologically, as well as take the implicit association test. So those are the two tasks for this part. We're just going to walk through the terms a little bit. We already talked about prejudice and implicit and explicit prejudice, but let's talk about those here. Prejudice and discrimination. Prejudice is just the thoughts you automatically load on somebody. So if you don't like Canadians, prejudice. As opposed to discrimination, which is the actions towards them. So you can have discriminative actions toward Canadians. So if I say I don't like Canadians, that's prejudice against Canadians. You can have prejudice towards people too, like I don't know, athletes. I like student athletes. That would be prejudice, positive prejudice toward athletes. But prejudice is the thoughts that you have, and then discrimination is the actions. So speaking of athletes, if I were to grade athletes' papers and tests easier, that would be discrimination. Positive discrimination, but discrimination. If I don't like Canadians, and if there's a Canadian in my class, and maybe I'm a little bit harder grading his tests, discrimination. So prejudice, the thoughts, discrimination, the actions. Of prejudice, we talked about last time, but you can have implicit or explicit prejudice. Explicit prejudice, skipping down one, is being fully aware and conscious of your prejudice, saying, I don't like Canadians. There, I said it. That's explicit prejudice. Implicit prejudice, on the other hand, is a subconscious prejudice, or a prejudice without your awareness. So that could be, I like Canadians just fine. I don't care where you come from. But at some deep level, you have these unconscious attitudes, positively or negatively, toward Canadians in my instance. Stereotyping is applying an entire characteristic toward a group of people. So all Canadians like maple syrup. Stereotype. All women, are nice. Stereotype. If you say all people group are trait, that's a stereotype. It can also be a positive stereotype, which is still a stereotype. If you say all McGinnis students are well-behaved and smarter than other school students, that would be a stereotype. Or you could say all McGinnis students are rich and spoiled, which is what a lot of outside schools think of us. I don't think that's true, but that would also be a stereotype. Just all group of people are trait. Stereotype. In-group, out-group bias probably is the main reason why for the last thousands and thousands of years for human existence, we have had prejudice. It says that we have a bias towards our in-group. And we are biased towards our in-group, and we have biased against our out-group. It just for whatever reason, that's what humans kind of have an automatic inclination towards. So you tend to gravitate toward people that are more similar to yourself, and that can be similar in age, similar in religion, similar in skin color, which would be one of the bad parts of prejudice. Similar in whatever the things that you like. We just like people that are similar to ourselves. So, but that fuels all sorts of bad things. So if people tend to like people that are their same gender, their same skin color, their same religion, their same part of town. We like people from Oklahoma, not Texas. Kansas. What kind of place is Kansas? In-group bias. We like McGinnis people. We don't like Bishop Kelly. Who do they think they are? What a trash school. In-group bias. We just like the groups that we belong to, which obviously creates a lot of bad things. But that is probably what fuels a lot of prejudice. You just like people that are similar to yourself. And then confirmation bias is a way that it's a psychological mechanism that keeps us believing what we already believe. When you hear evidence that supports what you believe, you tend to think about that evidence a lot. If you hear evidence that is against what you already believe, you tend to dismiss that evidence. So let's say you believe that poor people are lazy. And then you hear a news story about a person who has a lot of money that had to work really, really hard to get their money. Then that story would agree with your thought that wealthy people work really hard for their money and poor people are lazy. So you think, yeah, well, of course, because that's what I believe. And so you think about that a lot. But if you hear another story about that goes against what you think, you tend to not really think about that story very much. It's also part of why politics, you tend to stay where you are. If you're a Republican, you're probably going to stay a Republican. If you're a Democrat, probably going to stay a Democrat. Because if you hear evidence that is against what you believe there, you tend to dismiss it. You say, that's ridiculous. That's not true. Or if it is at least partially true, you say, well, yeah, but that's the exception. That's not the normal. The normal is what I think. And so then you stay a Republican or you stay a Democrat. It's also same thing with religion. If you are a Christian, if you're an atheist, if you're a Buddhist, if you're a Muslim, you tend to stay that because of confirmation bias. If you're an atheist and you hear evidence for God, you tend to dismiss that somehow. You just don't even think about it. But if you hear evidence against God, you say, well, yeah, of course. And that then confirms that there is no God, or vice versa. Then if you are a Christian and you hear some sort of a negative piece of data against the church, you think, no. Well, yeah. And you make some excuse in your mind. Then if you hear evidence for the church, you think, yes, this is why I love the church. It's why we think what we think. And it can also fuel racism. If you are a racist or a sexist or whatever, homophobic, and you have a piece of data that confirms your racist, sexist, whatever attitudes, you think, yeah, well, this is obvious, and this is why I think what I think. But if you see evidence that is against your prejudicial attitudes, you tend to dismiss that. One thing I ask when we're in class and not online, but I say, how many of you have a teacher at McGinnis that doesn't like you? And usually about 2/3 of the students raise their hands. And let me ask you this. That teacher that doesn't like you, does them not liking you make you want to try harder in their class? Or does it make you want to act up and not try in their class? And the reality is it makes you want to not try in their class. It almost makes you want to be worse in their class, which is funny how that works. You do worse in a class where the teacher doesn't like you. From the teacher's perspective, it seems like I don't like this Tim kid in my class. He's the worst. Talks all the time. You just got to watch out for that Tim kid. I put him in the corner. I keep him away from his friends that he talks to, and you just got to watch him. And so I treat Tim a little bit differently than the other kids. And in my mind, I'm going to make Tim a better kid because I'm putting an extra special watch on him. But the reality is that is going to incentivize Tim to ironically do even worse in my class and try less hard. And that's kind of Stereotype Threat. Stereotype Threat, they've done experiments where if you are aware that you are being discriminated or you're being discriminated against, or that there are prejudicial attitudes against you, you do worse. So they've done these controlled experiments where they'll have, it's often race, but it can be anything. But if you're a minority race, let's say, and you're taking a test, and I'm not quite sure how they do it, but somehow they make it aware that there are racist attitudes in the class, you will actually perform less good on that test than if you are not made aware of those things. Which makes sense in the same way that if you know that a teacher doesn't like you, you tend to not do as well in their class. But if you're a stereotype threat, if you're aware that there are stereotypes actively being made against you, it kind of reduces your cognitive abilities. And they've shown it over and over and over in tests. Now we're going to move on to the implicit association test. So for this, you can do it through your iPad or a computer here. It'll be a little different if you do it on iPad versus computer. If you do it on an iPad, there's going to be a yellow bar that pops up. you need to press that yellow bar. If you don't press the yellow bar and you don't have a keyboard, it won't work. So either have a keyboard or press the yellow bar. I won't have that yellow bar because I'm on a computer. But you're going to go to implicit.harvard.edu. That's implicit.harvard.edu. Then you'll have this. You're going to click on social attitudes. Yeah, you're going to see a little disclaimer here. Go to the bottom and click I wish to proceed after reading it. Then half of the time they'll give you a questionnaire. I didn't get it, so I'm one of the, I guess, lucky half that didn't get that. But if they get it, on the bottom right, it'll say I decline to answer or decline or something like that. You can just click decline, or answer it if you want to, but you don't need to. Then I want you to take 2 of these. So you're going to take 2 implicit association tests. One of them I want to be race. And the other can be anything of your choice. There's a lot of really good ones. Some of the gender ones are really good. I think gender career is a really good one. But what it does is it will show, in the case of race, it'll show a black face and a white face. Black faces and white faces on the left side of the screen and the right side of the screen. In fact, let's just look at it here. So I'll press E and I. E's on the left side of the keyboard, I is on the right side of the keyboard. For iPad, you're going to press the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen. It should make sense once you see it. This might be a little confusing, but once you get into it, it'll be a lot easier. So that's white is on the left, black is on the right. So this is left side white, right side black, left side white, left side, right side, right side, left side, left side, left side. And the second part is they're going to do good words or bad words. All this is randomized, so you might get bad on the left or bad on the right, and then good on the left, good on the right. It's all completely randomized. The level of control they put into this is really impressive. So in this case, if it's a bad word, it'll be on the left. If it's a good word, you do the right side. So that good disgust is a bad word, so it goes left side. Good spectacular is a good word, right side. Right side. Left side, left side, left side, right side, right side. Then, this is where the actual test starts. I was randomly assigned, but it will randomly assign bad and good to left and right, and white and black to left and right. So I happened to get bad white on the left side and good black on the right side. But again, that's like a 4-way counterbalance there. So it will probably be different for you. And here's what the test is measuring. The test is measuring your reaction time when associating bad with white and good with black, as opposed to after this, it's going to flip it, where in my case, it will be good white, bad black. So it's trying to measure the average reaction time for you associating good words or bad words with white or black faces. That may or may not make sense. But then all it does is it takes the reaction time and it will tell you if you have a strong, moderate, low, or no preference for white faces or black faces. And it'll do the same thing for the rest of the categories. One of the really good ones I've found is gender career. So instead of white and black faces, it's males and females. And then career is things like a desk job versus raising children. And if you have an automatic association of at-home work, like cooking or raising children with females, and traditional work jobs like sitting at a desk or doing paperwork with males. So that one I found is really good. But I want you to do 2 of them. One needs to be race. The other can be whatever you want. So have at it, whichever one you want to do. And that's that. So as usual, you'll fill out the Google form, and that's the end of this part.